This is a public hearing for the PFAS Contamination Fund, a fund that was established last spring through the governor's supplemental budget. The advisory committee was established via statute, and I will ask the members of the advisory committee who are here today to introduce themselves. Maybe I'll start with myself. I'm Beth Valentine. I am the director of the Fund to Address PFAS Contamination.
I'm Melanie Loisum, Commissioner at the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm not sure the cord is going to reach. Good morning. My name is Becca Bolas. I'm Executive Director at Maine Public Health Association, and I'm co-chair of the Medical Monitoring Subcommittee.
I'm State Representative Jessica Fay. I represent House District 86, which is Raymond, Casco, part of the town of Poland, and Fry Island. And I am a co-chair of this committee. And Senator Stacey Brenner is the other co-chair, and unfortunately, she is not feeling well today, so she's unable to join us.
Maybe that worked. There we go. I'm Jim Buckle, and I'm an organic fruit and vegetable grower in Unity, Maine.
Good morning. I'm Diane Rowland. I'm the Dean of the College of Natural Sciences, Forestry, and Agriculture and Director of the Experiment Station at the University of Maine.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. My name is Amanda Beal, and I'm also co-chairing the research committee with Dean Rowland.
So I'm going to begin with a very general and broad introduction to the fund, beginning with the goals. In the short term, which we have defined as being within 24 months of the discovery of PFAS, the short-term goal of the fund is to support farmers impacted by PFAS contamination while they investigate and consider options. And then our long-term goal is to enable impacted farmers and farms to thrive in their new circumstances. The origin of the fund, as I mentioned, is the governor's supplemental budget that was passed in April of 2022. Real work on development of the program began in September when I was hired as the director. In October, we established an advisory committee according to the membership identified in the statute. We met for the first time in November to review ongoing efforts to address PFAS contamination in Maine. So that was a lot of the same information. And if you were here for the first session this morning about the activities of DEP, DACA, Department of Ag, Conservation and Forestry, Maine CDC, and other agencies, so the ongoing work. In December, we met to identify initial priorities and to identify potential subcommittee members. Maybe the name's self-explanatory, but the role of the advisory committee is to provide recommendations to the department, and then these subcommittees will take a finer look at particular topics and particular types of supports that we can provide. So we have identified members of 4 subcommittees. Each of those subcommittees will have met for the first time by the end of this month. In no particular order, the first subcommittee is Financial and Business Support Subcommittee. So the mission of this group is to develop, analyze, and recommend strategies for short and long-term financial and planning assistance for farmers impacted by PFAS contamination. So this group is going to be looking at supports such as income replacement, mortgage payments, compensation for losses, infrastructure payments, business planning, technical advice, loan guarantees, legal support, and support for market access. Another subcommittee is the Land Transfer Subcommittee. And this group will be developing strategies and recommendations for the purchase and sale of agricultural land with known PFAS contamination. They'll be looking at questions such as, under what circumstances would the state purchase land? How will value be assessed? Who will hold, monitor, and maintain the land? And whether there should be a disclosure requirement as part of transfers. A third subcommittee is research. This group will develop, analyze, and recommend strategies for short and long-term research that informs farm management decisions. They will be contemplating or helping to refine research priorities, considering whether and how the fund could support applied research to inform farm management decisions, and also making recommendations for the structure of a competitive grant program. The final subcommittee has a bit of a broader scope than the other three, which focus primarily on agriculture. The mission of the health subcommittee expands the focus to include people whose drinking water has been contaminated. They will be contemplating the role of the state in PFAS testing and monitoring, questioning who should pay for or whether the fund specifically could pay for PFAS blood testing when insurance does not cover the full cost, strategies for providing medical monitoring for people found to have elevated levels of PFAS, what sort of access to mental health care can we provide, as well as a system of peer support, and also contemplating a PFAS exposure study to determine how farmers are impacted or exposed differently from the general public. For example, riding on a tractor, inhaling dust. Is that a significant source of concern? As I've mentioned, none of these subcommittees have met yet, but are all scheduled to meet by the end of the month. We are at the very early stage of setting up this program, and we wanted to take the opportunity today here at the Agricultural Trade Show to get input from the public on how funds ought to be spent. I've identified a number of subjects that the subcommittees will be looking at, but are there other subjects that we haven't considered? Or of these subjects that I've identified, are there certain ones that ought to be emphasized? Here are just some questions to start the conversation, but really we're here to listen and to hear from you what the priorities ought to be for this fund. And with that, I think I'll turn the mic over to Representative Fay.
We have less chairs than people here, which I think is a good thing. Thank you, Beth, for that introduction to the fund. As I said before, I'm State Representative Jessica Fay, and I'm the chair of this committee. The reason for the meeting today is to hear from you. Beth outlined sort of the thoughts around the purpose of the fund, but this fund has been set up to assist in the categories that Beth mentioned. And we're looking for input on what that means to each of you and your thoughts. If you didn't see something up there that should be, hopefully folks will let us know. Some housekeeping. We have microphones here. I don't know if we have someone who can help. Okay, someone to help pass the microphone out to folks. And I think I'm going to be try to be pretty strict on limiting folks to 3 minutes. The committee is here to listen to you, so I just want to remind the committee that if we have clarifying questions, I think that's important, but really this is for us to gather information and ideas from you. So I don't have a gavel or anything, so let's just get the get the hearing started. I don't know who's ready to go first, and also if you have written copies of what you'd like us to hear, please do share that with us, and I would say maybe leave it up here on the front table. Go ahead, sir. I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself, share your name, where you're from, and please use the microphone so that everyone in the room can hear you. And I think, there we go. I guess I'm timing.
I hate these things. Can you hear me without it? We're recording this for archival purposes. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, if I remember right, my name's Henry Perkins. I'm from Albion. If I remember right, you had an $80 million fund to tap into. Is that right?
60.
60. Oh, but there's a lot of other money out there that people are raising. Is that going to be combined with that?
It's a good question, sir. And we're here to maybe not necessarily answer questions, but to take input. So I think how I'm going to read your comment is that the committee might want to consider, other uses, other money that's coming in as well, and not just the $60 million fund. Yeah. Okay.
Hi there, Annie Watson. I'm a dairy farmer from Whitefield. I'm also president of the Maine Dairy Industry Association. First and foremost, MDI feels that we need to ensure that our food supply is safe. We do not want our Maine farms harmed or disadvantaged in the marketplace, which could ultimately affect and hurt our limited infrastructure. We need to ensure that the affected farms that we currently know of are made whole financially, and that the loss of income due to these issues is supported financially. We also need to ensure that there is a plan in place for future farms that are affected, and that we have a really clear path forward. We would also recommend that any research that's done have on-the-ground impact, and whatever use our on-the-farm methods could be used that is practical and applicable would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very concise. I appreciate that.
Hi, Nan Kennedy, Town of Washington, sheep and wool. I have probably a sticky question. I'm just wondering, we've known about sludge and other spreading for a long time. Is there any culpability or responsibility of the previous owner who transferred the property to take some responsibility? I mean, it seems to me before we spend a lot of state funds, there seems to be some responsibility that should have been held by the previous owner and whomever helped with that transfer. Is that being considered?
I think everything is being considered at this point. We don't have a legal subcommittee, but I certainly think that it is important to recognize all of these concerns. So, sorry, I can't see you. So, we'll take note, certainly, and appreciate you sharing that particular concern. I really hope we have a few more folks who are willing to share, or let us know what you think, or let us know how you think these funds should be spent. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name's John Tibbetts. I'm in Lyman, southern Maine. I'm going to be affected a little bit different by this than I think some people are. I only own 12 acres, but we lease around 850. Almost half of my ground has come with some concern that it either has been spread or hasn't been spread. We haven't got the testing to find out what the contamination rates are yet. But I was wondering if there's any talk about making somebody like myself whole, where I don't own the land, the farms I'm using aren't even being farmed unless I farm them. And I was wondering, I haven't heard any talk about some of more unconventional farmers that farm this way. And then my next concern is trying to blame a farmer for spreading something that he was licensed. That concerns me, because if he went under DEP or Department of Ag regulations and followed all the rules that he was supposed to do under guidance from the state, I don't see how they can be held in any context responsible for that. Those are my concerns.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, my name's Nick Armentrout, and I'm neighbor at Jonathan's here. I'm in Lyman. Run a small farm there for about 25 years. I farm on the side, like a lot of folks, part-time. And one of the jobs I've had the pleasure of being involved with off my farms, I worked in the wool industry for over 11 years, commercial wool textiles. And in particular, domestic U.S. manufacturing and domestic wool. And along the way, I saw livestock and sheep used for all kinds of different purposes, resource management, targeted and prescribed grazing programs. When I stepped out of that role, I found my way to the American Solar Grazing Association. I did not start in favor of solar on ground mount solar sites. I started in opposition. But as I learned more about the potential for thoughtfully designed, holistically thought through, planned solar sites, I saw, frankly, an opportunity for more grazing animals and perhaps support for rural economies here in Maine. Farms grow food and fiber and fuel. We're leapfrogging the fiber. I'm not worried about the hemp industry. There's a place for linen and flax production, something we traditionally always grew in this part of the world, and there's a place for wool fiber production. And there's a place for wool fiber production in conjunction with grazing contaminated lands while we are trying to figure out the food that we can consume on those farms. There's a place for wool production perhaps to replace some income for these farmers. I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody's missing the boat on the remarkable wool industry. It needs help. But I think this is a way that we could help the industry. We know how to grow these animals. We know how to grow fiber. And right now, there are wolves shipping into Maine from Montana to tap into even just the small part of manufacturing infrastructure we have in this state up at Bartlett Yarns. We can think this through. We don't have to make clothing. We can make perhaps industrial and commercial textiles, perhaps wool-based textiles to replace sophisticated plastic geotextiles. This technology exists from Montana State University. University of Vermont has looked at wool-based insulations. This isn't reinventing the wheel. This is going back and trying to make up for some of the mistakes that PFAS perhaps came from. Sophisticated textile manufacturing. I know a little bit about that. It doesn't have to be manufactured that way. So I want, hopefully, this committee to consider fiber production and research into fiber production, with or without solar, but research into fiber production on some of these contaminated farms. I'd be happy to help, and I can direct other people sitting in this room who I know would be happy to help too. Thanks for your consideration.
Right on 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Armentrout. Appreciate your timing. Thank
It's
you.
Nan again, and actually, my follow-up question was, were you going to, in this funding source, perhaps reserve some of it for mitigation strategies, specifically, obviously, since I'm a sheep and wool grower, that is also my interest in the possibility of, using animals that will, I don't know, we don't know, I think, at this point, whether or not they can actually, suck up the PFAS and then, dump the carcasses in a hole so they're not eaten. But, utilize that fiber in a way that it's half the weight of wool is sequestered carbon, et cetera, et cetera. It's offsetting all kinds of fast fashion, if you do want to put it into the fashion industry. But there's just so many other benefits, and perhaps there's a silver lining here somewhere. And I'm just wondering if you're going to reserve any of the funding sources for mitigation strategies.
It's a great question. As we develop the plan, that's the whole reason why we're here, is to hear those types of suggestions as we figure out how to develop out what is going to happen with the funds in this fund.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Spalding, and I work for Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, MOFGA, and we've been partnering through this PFAS challenge for years now, and I am really grateful to you for having this forum today. I did want to just share that the Emergency Relief Fund that we have been working on with Maine Farmland Trust has been incredibly important, and I guess the lesson and the messaging that I wanted to convey to you, we've raised and put out, well, we've raised close to $1.5 million in direct emergency relief for farmers, and we've put out a little over 800,000 of that now, and it has been for income replacement, testing, infrastructure, and wellness, these 4 categories. But I guess that the message I wanted to convey is just the working working very speedily to disseminate the funds and not holding back, because we know that there's more that's going to be found. There's going to be a need, and we're going to have to raise more money. But we have heard from farmers that if we hadn't acted quickly, they would have been out of business. And so that's just, I know you're all working incredibly hard, but I just want to underscore that that is a message we're hearing consistently from farmers. Just working very speedily is very important. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spalding.
Hello, my name is Serene Hart. I'm here on behalf of my family, whose family farm was just diagnosed with PFAS. In listening to the lectures and doing my own research, I have concluded that within the underlying pinnings of this fabric of PFAS contamination, I'm learning that PFAS is less about health concerns and more about transforming our farms into solar farms. And in addition, whereas PFAS is mainly found on hay fields, it is also about transforming beef farms and grazing farms, going away from meat and more towards a plant-based diet. And quite honestly, I think it's cruel.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Please don't be shy, folks. This is your opportunity to share with the committee how you think these funds should be spent and your experiences so that we can put them together. Anyone else? Go ahead, please.
I'm Patty Duffy. I'm an agricultural lender, also on the board of directors for MOVCA. I'd like to thank both the state of Maine and everybody here at this table and MOVCA and MFT for the response It's been an incredibly challenging year, or almost a year and a half now, for our agricultural producers. I would like to share that agriculture's been through a lot throughout the ages. If we work together, we'll get through this. There is opportunity out there to learn from each other, and to have the state of Maine, our farmers and our food producers come out stronger and better on the other side. And as a person that has multi-layers of merino wool on me right now, I love your idea and this wool farmer's perspective, because part of the PFAS chain is some of those plastic clothes everybody wears. So thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who's up there, because we know this is time-consuming, the work that you're doing, and it's very much appreciated, as well as all the farmers and food producers in this room and the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another hour set aside here. Keep bringing the ideas. Go ahead, sir. Hang on one sec. Let me just get the microphone for you.
Okay. I'm wondering if we get a tax bill on real estate every year, or is anybody going to alert the town's assessors that maybe this land isn't worth what it used to be? I guess that's my question. Oh, yes, I'm Henry Perkins again.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. It's a good question. Yes, there is some awkward silence here, but I'm going to give folks time to, and please don't be shy. I know it can seem somewhat intimidating, but we're really here to listen to you. So I hope that this group of people sitting up here behind the microphone is not having a negative impact on your willingness to share. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Jim Hilton. I had a dairy farm in Norwich Walk. My farm hasn't been on the hot list, but a year ago, 2 years ago, last October, our farm got pulled out of a hat of farms to have its milk tested by our milk supplier. And we had to dump our 34,000 pounds of milk every other day for a week until the test come back, and that we were okay. I don't really know what okay is, but we're back on the truck and thankful for that. Our co-op had to eat the cost of this, all this milk that got dumped, and it was my understanding there was 2 farms a week, 2 farms a month they'd picked for a period of time that they went through this whole thing. I don't know if any of you are aware of that, but significant amount of money that the co-op, who is basically a non-profit anyways, and nothing they had money to pay for. And the other thing that bothers me is we were licensed by the state for a sludge application on some of that property. And that information was put out on the internet for the public to see, and with no explanation. We were licensed for 274 acres, but only a small fraction of that ever got any sludge applied to it. In fact, one whole tract of land that was in the town of Starks had a moratorium on it. So that never got. But if you look on the internet, this site that's got all that stuff on it, looks like I'm a big user of it over in Starks, and it was 0. And I just think some of this information that's going around here, I mean, someone ought to be looking at that and getting the fact checking done a little better. So, you know, I'm glad the state stepped forward with some of this fund, and you're trying to figure out how to spend it. That's all good, but it's been a little nerve-wracking when you get a call Monday morning that no more milk goes on the truck until the test comes back.
Thank you. looking for additional comments.
Dale Cole, I'm with MDIA too. Just because you have a void, I think that looking down the road, nutrients are valuable, and just putting them in a pile, at some point you need to look at, what comes out of your plants to be able to use the nutrients. I'm not saying what you do with the money, that's Annie laid that out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I really don't know a lot about this. Most of the information I've gotten is in the last 2 days by going to these meetings. And
Sir, I'm sorry, can you let us know your name?
Frank Card.
Thank you.
And I think it would be interesting. People think just because you spread, I never spread sludge on my farm, but I think it'd be interesting in knowing, or at least publishing, that not all sludge had PFAS in it. And we ought to be looking at is what sludge did have PFAS, and that's the information that should be passed along. And what levels of PFAS was in it. I mean, I don't think this information should be secret. It should be said, hey, this company had sludge, and they spread it on these areas. It should be public information. This is really a public issue here, and it should be publicized. And if I'm wrong or right about that, not all sludge has PFAS in it. Instead of just saying because this farm spread sludge, now they're contaminated, and that's not true. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Anyone else? I think if no one else wants to speak up now, what I'm gonna do is ask the committee to take maybe a 5-minute break, and we'll come back. Let's make it a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. If anyone else, because we do have this room for a little bit longer, if anyone else is downstairs and they are expecting to be, for us to be here for a while. So I want to make sure that we give people a chance who may think that they could come in a little bit later on. So stay if you'd like, or go downstairs and see what's going on. And we'll be back here at 11:50 and see if there's anyone else that would like to share information or ideas with us. And if not, then we'll adjourn a little bit early. Thanks, folks, everyone who's already shared. Appreciate it. All right, folks. I'd like to bring the committee back into order. So I just, as I said before the break, I just wanted to make sure that we gave folks an opportunity to maybe think a little bit more, see if we gathered any folks that came in late. I just really want to make sure that we get as much feedback and comment as possible. I would like to see if there is anyone else that would like to share comment about PFAS or suggestions about how to use the fund. Go ahead. Oh, thank you.
Hi. I am partner with my father, and before the PFA situation hit us, we had been shipping milk on the organic market for 5 years. And financially, we were doing well. I was financially able to buy my father's half of the farm. Now, that has changed. Since October 2020, we were forced to use all our reserves to keep the farm going. It took 11 months to clean it out of the cows, our 230 dairy cows, and identify the land that was contaminated from sludge spreading that occurred in the 90s before we purchased the farm. We had put the land in Maine Farmland Trust to preserve it, the farm, for the agriculture future generation. Now we have 150 acres we cannot pasture our cows on. We find ourselves with no option but to liquidate the dairy cows by spring. As any business owner, of course, we have a mortgage to pay and other operate loans we acquired during this stressful period. My father is 77. He was depending on his half share for retirement. Now I've lost my livelihood, which I love, my children's future that we had planned, and has been our dreams our whole lives. We sincerely request your support to help us recover from this devastating loss due to PFA contamination, which was not our doing in any way, and is causing us to close down our farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Is there anyone else who has thoughts about what we could do with this fund, how the money should be spent, specific suggestions or impacts? Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Sturple from Limestone. We've got a small family farm that we lease the land out. Our neighbor to the south, he's a hay producer. Showed him on the map one day, said, look, you've got PFAS on your farm. Said, I didn't know a thing about it. When we were coming down here, he said, if you learn something about what's going on, let me know. Because he doesn't know a thing about it. Guy's worked his whole life as a Border Patrol agent to retire to buy the farm. And now he's got what's going to be a lifelong problem there. Limestone is going to be the PFAS capital of Maine because we've got Loring Air Force Base. We've got all the water coming off of Loring. It's contaminated. We can't eat the fish. My kids have been eating the fish for years out of the back of our stream. So can we irrigate with this water? Can the people we lease the land to irrigate with this water? I've asked this question a couple times today and yesterday, and got some, well, yeah, it's probably not the best thing, but we've got no advice. We've got no direction from the state. We're leasing the land. You want the farmer to be able to do the best that they can with it. We don't want all of Limestone's land, farm production land, to become contaminated, but we've got very little direction. You've got the wood company out there at Loring doing all this investigation, And we've heard very little other than in 2 years that we might know what's going on, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to clean up Loring. That's bound to affect the county. That's bound to affect the production up there. It's bound to affect the irrigation. So we're at a loss of, what do we do? What do we talk to people about? Who do we talk to? I guess that's my comment.
Thank you for that feedback.
I'm Megan Flanagan. I'm contract veterinarian that I work part-time with the Department of Ag right now. I would say you should talk to those people sitting over there, Duncan and Mary, because there are 2 current ACOs, and they would be the best people to get, more information and further testing assistance and that sort of thing, because you are probably not in the sludge category, it sounds like. You're more Department of Defense situation from the airport and whatnot, so, but still impacted agricultural land, so that should fall into our category, I would think. I just had, if somebody said this at the beginning, I missed the first few minutes, sorry, but we get a lot of questions that we can't answer for farmers, and there is tons of research ongoing. We monitor that regularly. We try to disseminate what we do know, what we don't know. But something for your panel to consider perhaps would be funding a PhD student, or perhaps several PhD students, not necessarily at the University of Maine, although that would be fine too, but in a university where they have research ongoing that would be actually directly applicable to our situations. So soils, livestock, farming, whatever variety, because that could be a way to help in terms of finding out more information. Because there's questions every day that we're like, we wish we knew the answer, and we could design a study, but that's not what we do at the state, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because we can't do everything. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Welcome.
Glenda Pereira. I am an assistant professor as well as the statewide dairy specialist at the University of Maine. And I was introduced to PFAS very recently in my role of about a year in this position. And yes, Megan, thanks for sharing that. On behalf of the University of Maine, and maybe you already know this because I know Dean Rowland serves on the committee, and she is providing some feedback on what we're doing. But we are working as quickly as we can to provide some of these solutions. We do have sort of an all-hands-on-deck approach with myself and my colleague, Dr. Juan Romero. So we are obviously trying to do the research to provide those recommendations to specifically dairy farmers for the time being, but hopefully other livestock farmers as well. And one of the things that I wanted to share that we struggle with, especially as we talk to our partners and collaborators outside of the University of Maine, specifically within the dairy industry, as we reach out to other professors at other institutions, even ones that have been affected or there's been some contamination in that state, there's been an issue of where do we bring the animals, how do we handle them, bringing them on university property. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity for Maine to take, some of that charge where we can use a farm. It doesn't have to be on university property, but then it becomes, a way for other researchers to then say, hey, can we work with Maine? They already have a farm established to do research, because animal research is so intensive. It's, you have to do all of the management of it, as well as take, a variety of samples. Especially when you're dealing with milk, animals need to be milked constantly. It's a lot of labor, containment too. So if urine and feces is obviously an issue too. So I wonder if that just creates an opportunity to work with other universities and other researchers, that if we had that facility here, it could potentially lead to a lot of really good projects and solutions quicker than we can do, because obviously we have limited resources within the state of Maine. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Do I see any other folks who would like to comment? Go ahead. Sure.
Wait until there's anybody else, but I just wanted to mention a few other things. I think that the story that we have just heard from the organic dairy farmers underscores that there are likely going to be there's going to be more pressure and more call for whole farm buyouts. And I know that is on your radar, but I just feel like there needs to be a lot of discussion about that and how to prioritize and how to allocate that and be ready for that. The other, a couple of other things is, how is the potential lowering of the threshold for PFAS testing going to impact the overall pool of resources? I don't know the answer, but that's, those two things I think are going to have a big impact, and there's clearly a need for more funds to go into this fund. And then from a research perspective, a couple of things. One is there any consideration of looking at PFAS contaminated airborne dust and how that is affecting farm products in farmland? And then another thing, we had a presentation this morning from Pam Breyer talking about PFAS and pesticides. And from a public health perspective, I think it would be really important to know how PFAS is prevalent in pesticides, and how is PFAS in pesticides affecting farmers and farm workers and applicators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna say going once. Is there anyone else that would like to? Go ahead, sir. Don't apologize. This is your opportunity to share.
It's me again. One thing, Henry Perkins, one thing that may have put a little damper on the questions that you asked is you asked for names and where they're from, and some people don't want their name and destination spewed all over the airways like this guy's gonna do. So. I didn't do that, sir. Okay. Well, thank you. But I was talking to somebody as I took my little break, and he said, I don't want my name mentioned. So that's just my little comment.
Understood, sir. This is a public hearing, and I would encourage anyone who has ideas and suggestions and concerns to reach out to the committee. And I'm pretty sure, Beth, you have the email address memorized, but either that or even just give a call. These are public funds, and so they do require public disclosure. But we do want to be sensitive to the fact that people might have concerns about raising issues publicly. So you can reach out to any of us, I would say individually, but also, Beth, do you want to?
Yeah, so the PFAS Fund has a space on the Department of Agriculture's website. So there's a lot of information there. You can sign up to be notified through our listserv when there are meetings, and you can send comments to us. And the email address is pfasfund.dacf@maine.gov. But again, that's on the website, so you don't have to memorize it. Just, poke around on the department's website. And my phone number is there as well, so feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to talk about the progress of the fund, where we are, and
Thanks, Beth. There will be other opportunities for public comment. We have a couple of other, we're statutorily required to hold, I think it's 2 more public hearings.
2 public hearings annually.
And then the report will be issued to the Legislature's Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I'm not quite sure when that reporting date is, but if you follow the DACF committee in the legislature, that information will be forthcoming through their notification process. So all of this information, again, will be available on the website that Beth just gave the information about. And I really appreciate all of the feedback. I think we got some really good feedback today, and that was the purpose of this. Before I close, I see one more person with their hand up. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It's Nan Kennedy from Washington, Maine. I guess we've been living with PFAS for a long time, better living with science, et cetera, et cetera. And it's in all kinds of consumer goods. Is there any intention to perhaps use some of this funds, or could we use some of this funds to generate some awareness of where those are? I mean, there are fire retardants in your kids' PJs. It's on your cookware. It's it's all over the place. So I urge you to consider some kind of marketing outreach awareness in addition to just remediation or whatever.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I know I watched it but don't remember it. The movie Dark Waters, it's a major Hollywood production about PFAS and PFOA, and starts to get into the whole range of chemicals that starting in the 1950s 3M was making. That's right, at DuPont. So, I mean, I watched that movie a long time ago and I didn't make the connection, but there you go. There's a major Hollywood movie on the subject.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments about impacts and how we might proceed on using this fund? Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Adam Nordell from Songbird Farm, and also here representing Defend Our Health, environmental health nonprofit. And nice to see you all. Thank you for everything you're doing. This is a really rocky road for everybody who's affected by it and who's engaged in it. So thanks to you on the committee for showing up again and again. And thanks to everybody in the room for being here and engaging. This is scary, and it's real. So appreciate everybody showing up. I just want to keep a close focus on the health impacts of PFAS. My family, as I've said numerous times, is in public is going to be living with this for a long time. We can't walk away from it, even if we can leave our farm. It travels with us, and we're not hardly alone. There are people across the state that are impacted by this, and we really have to keep the health monitoring near the center of attention, and look for ways to support all of those impacted people to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Mr. Nordell.
I'll add to that on that score. Is there any intention to do any public testing of other humans that aren't necessarily living on the farms that may not realize that they've been impacted? I mean, just the general public, as we've done, for instance, with COVID testing. I hadn't even thought of that, but that would be an interesting use, and it would certainly be, I'm sure, embraced by the tax-paying constituents.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, everyone, again for sharing. I know it's not easy, and it's not an easy subject. Really appreciate all of your input, and right now I think we'll adjourn this public hearing. Thank you all.